The 5 levels of asset protection for real estate investments. Before we jump into the 5 levels, I want to address why asset protection is important for real estate investors. Investors want to be protected from the 3 Ds. Death. Investors want to create generational wealth. They don't want their real estate to be affected by expensive probate and unnecessary taxes. Disability. Unfortunately, 1 in 4 of us will become disabled at some point. Disaster. Real estate investors want to be protected from fraudulent lawsuits and predators. Level 1, a revocable living trust. This makes sure your real estate is protected when you pass away. It ensures that it avoids probate, saving your family time and money. Level 2, insurance. I worked in civil litigation for many years, and I worked on both sides, the defense side and the plaintiff side. I handled construction defect cases, so I defended builders and subcontractors against lawsuits. And the number one issue I saw on both the plaintiff side and the defendant side is that people did not have good insurance. So many people wonder, well, what is good insurance? You really want to make sure you work with a specific person. You don't just create something online. And you want that insurance professional to know about your specific types of investments, your specific types of risks. So for example, I have a piece of property that's on a corner lot, and I'm very concerned here in Colorado about slips and falls. So I called up an insurance broker and he sent me a quote, and I went and read through the policy. And on the exclusions page, there was an exclusion for slips and falls, which means if I had gotten that policy, there would be no coverage. Now, when I pointed it out to the broker, he apologized. It was just a simple mistake, and adding that coverage didn't cost me anything additional. Level 3, LLCs. The reason to use an LLC is to separate your personal assets from your business asset. So the idea is you put your rental property in an LLC, so if that LLC gets sued and a judgment is entered, they can't get into your personal assets. An example is I was involved in a case where my client was the victim of a shooting. He was at a bar, an innocent bystander, when someone started shooting and he was injured. We sued the bar, and the owners of the bar owned this property and several businesses all in one LLC. So not only were we able to get discovery from all of the different assets, but we were able to argue that we could get into all of their assets. So the lesson here is if you own multiple businesses or you own multiple pieces of real estate, you want to segregate them. You want to put each one in a separate LLC. Now, for many investors, they own so many different properties, it's just not feasible for them to have 20 LLCs. So a lot of times what they'll do is they'll have clusters and they'll put like things together in one LLC. So for example, they'll put all of their Airbnbs in one LLC, their commercial property in one LLC, and then get insurance policies to cover that cluster. Level 4 is a holding company. And the reason people use holding companies is to really make things administratively easier and to add an extra layer of protection. Now, for many investors, what they do is they hold their real estate in one entity, and then they have a separate entity that they use as a management entity. So that's the entity that they'll hold leases with. So for example, if one of their tenants were to sue them, they're suing an entity that doesn't hold the actual real estate. And the holding company is a separate entity. So with that holding company, they're able to administer everything, make things much simpler, and create a better layer of protection. Now, it's very important if you have holding companies and LLCs, you want to assign your ownership interest to your trust specifically. And many investors choose Wyoming as a state for holding companies because of their charging order and privacy protections. What charging order protection is if someone was able to get a judgment against you, meaning they sue you and a judge awarded damages or a jury awarded damages, that charging order in Wyoming, they would not be able to collect unless you actually took money out. So for example, here in Colorado, we don't have charging order protection. And what that means is if someone sues you, they can force you to sell that real estate to satisfy that judgment. However, in states that have charging order protection, they can't force you to sell assets. They can only take money if you specifically distribute. Level 5 is an asset protection trust. And the most common type of asset protection trust we set up is a lifetime asset protection trust for your kids. What that means is your trust will flow to your children in a lifetime asset protection trust, which protects it from their future creditors and divorces. Now, you can create lifetime asset protection trusts and irrevocable trust for yourself in life. However, you are giving up control in exchange for that asset protection. So typically, you're always going to start with a foundational plan with a revocable living trust, and then move certain assets into irrevocable asset protection trusts. Now, for many investors, it's not worth the money to set up that type of structure until they're over the state tax threshold, which today, as of 2024, is $13.9 million. Other investors have money that they just want to set aside that they don't mind not controlling anymore, but they want to be protected. So for them, they may invest in that asset protection trust before they are at that level.